them walk by brooks of water, in a straight path in which they shall not stumble. For I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Hear the word of the Lord, O nations, and declare it in the coastlands far away. Say, he who scattered Israel will gather him, and will keep him as a shepherd keeps his flock. For the Lord has ransomed Jacob, and has redeemed him from hands too strong for him. They shall come and sing aloud on the height of Zion, and they shall be radiant over the goodness of the Lord, over the grain, the wine, and the oil, and over the young of the flock and the herd. Their life shall be like a watered garden, and they shall languish no more. Then shall the young women rejoice in the dance, and the young men and the old shall be merry. I will turn their mourning into joy. I will comfort them and give them gladness for sorrow. I will feast the soul of the priests with abundance, and my people shall be satisfied with my goodness, declares the Lord. Thus says the Lord, a voice is heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. Rachel is weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted for her children, because they are no more. Thus says the Lord, keep your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears, for there is a reward for your work, declares the Lord, and they shall come back from the land of the enemy. There is hope for your future, declares the Lord, and your children shall come back to their own country. I have heard Ephraim grieving. You have disciplined me, and I was disciplined, like an untrained calf. Bring me back that I may be restored, for you are the Lord my God. For after I had turned away, I relented, and after I was instructed, I struck my thigh. I was ashamed. I struck my thigh. I was ashamed, and I was confounded, because I bore the and I was confounded, because I bore the disgrace of my.
Hello. Ezekiel chapter 48. Now these are the names of the tribes. From the north end to the coast of the way of Hethlon, as one goeth to Hamath. Hazar Enon, the border of Damascus northward, to the coast of Hamath. For these are his sides east and west, a portion for Dan. And by the border of Dan, from the east side and to the west side, a portion for Asher. And by the border of Asher, from the east side, even unto the west side, a portion for Naphtali. And by the border of Naphtali, from the east side unto the west side, a portion for Manasseh. And by the border of Manasseh, from the east side unto the west side, a portion for Ephraim. And by the border of Ephraim, from the east side, even unto the west side, a portion for Reuben. And by the border of Reuben, from the east side unto the west side, a portion for Judah. And by the border of Judah, from the east side unto the west side, shall be the offering, which ye shall offer, of 25,000 reeds in breadth, and in length, as one of the other parts, from the east side unto the west side. And the sanctuary shall be in the midst of it. The oblation that ye shall offer unto the Lord shall be of 25,000 in length, and 10,000 in breadth. And for them, even for the priest, shall be this holy oblation. Toward the north, 25,000 in length, and toward the west, 10,000 in breadth, and toward the east, 10,000 in breadth, and toward the south, 25,000 in length. And the sanctuary of the Lord shall be in the midst thereof. It shall be for the priests that are sanctified of the sons of Zadok, which have kept my charge, which went not astray when the children of Israel went astray, as the Levites went astray. And the oblation of the land is offered. And this oblation of the land that is offered shall be unto them a thing most holy by the order of the Levites. And over against the border of the priest and the Levites shall have 25,000 in length, and 10,000 in breadth. All the length shall be 25,000, and the breadth 10,000. And they shall not sell of it, neither exchange, nor alienate the first fruits of the land, for it is holy unto the Lord. And 5,000 that are left in the breadth over against the 25,000 shall be a profane place for the city, for dwelling, and for suburbs. And the city shall be in the midst thereof. And these shall be the measures thereof: the north side 4,500, and the south side 4,500, and the east side 4,500, and the west side 4,500. The suburbs of the city shall be toward the north 250, and toward the south 250, and toward the east 250, and toward the west 250. And the residue in the length over against the oblation of the holy portion shall be 10,000 eastward and 10,000 westward, and it shall be over against the oblation of the holy portion. And the increase thereof shall be for food unto them that serve the city. And they that serve the city shall serve it out of all the tribes of Israel. All the oblation shall be 25,000 by 25,000 shall be all the oblation shall be 25,000 by 25,000. Ye shall offer the holy oblation foursquare with the possession of the city, and the residue shall be for the prince on the one side and on the other of the holy oblation, and of the possession of the city over against the 25,000 of the oblation toward the east border, and westward over against the 25,000 toward the west border, over against the portions of the prince, and it shall be the holy oblation. And the sanctuary of the house shall be in the midst thereof. Moreover, from the possession of the Levites and from the possession of the city, being in the midst of that which is the prince's, between the border of Judah and the border of Benjamin, shall be for the prince. As for the rest of the tribes, from the east side unto the west side, Benjamin shall have a portion. And by the border of Benjamin, from the east side unto the west side, Simeon shall have a portion. And by the border of Simeon, from the east side unto the west side, Issachar a portion. And by the border of Issachar, from the east side unto the west side, Zebulun a portion. And by the border of Zebulun, from the east side unto the west side, Gad a portion. And by the border of Gad, at the south side, southward, the border shall be even from Tamar unto the waters of strife in Kadesh, and to the river toward the great sea. This is the land which ye shall divide by lot unto the tribes of Israel for inheritance, and these are their portions, saith the Lord. And these are the goings out of the city on the north side, 4,500 measures. And the gates of the city shall be after the names of the tribes of Israel. 3 gates northward, 1 gate of Reuben, 1 gate of Judah, 1 gate of Levi. And at the east side, 4,500, and 3 gates, and 1 gate of Joseph, 1 gate of Benjamin, 1 gate of Dan. And of the south side, 4,500 measures, and 3 gates, 1 gate of Simeon, 1 gate of Issachar, 1 gate of Zebulun. At the west side, 4,500, with their 3 gates, 1 gate of Gad, 1 gate of Asher, 1 gate of Naphtali. It was round about 18,000 measures. And the name of the city from that day shall be, The Lord is there. The Lord is there. Okay. Job chapter 17. My breath is corrupt. My days are extinct. The graves are ready for me. Are there not mockers with me? And doth not mine eye continue in their provocation? Lay down now, put me in surety with thee. Who is he? Who is he that will strike hands with me? For thou hast hid their heart from understanding. Neither shalt thou not exalt them. He that speaketh flattery to his friends, even the eyes of his children shall fail. He hath made me also a byword of the people, and aforetime I was as a tabret. Mine eye also is dim by reason of sorrow, and all my members are as a shadow. Upright men shall be astonished, or upright men shall be astonied at this. And the innocent shall stir up himself against the hypocrite. The righteous also shall hold his way, and he that hath clean hands shall be stronger and stronger. But as for you all, do ye return? Do ye return? But as for you all, do ye return, and come now, for I cannot find one wise man among you. My days are past, my purposes are broken off, even the thoughts of my heart. They change the night into day. The light is short because of darkness. If I wait, the grave is mine house. I have made my bed in the darkness. I have said to corruption, thou art my father. To the worm, thou art my mother and my sister. And where is now my hope? As for my hope, who shall see it? They shall go down to the bars of the pit, when our rest together is in the dust. Okay, moving right along. Okay. Okay. Moving right along. Where am I? Okay, right here. The book of Daniel. Not technically a prophet himself, but a government official. Daniel described in the first half of his book. Daniel described in the first half of his book certain experiences of himself and his three friends, stressing always how the Lord blessed them in critical situations. Then, in the last half of the book, Daniel reproduced several visions which the Lord had sent him. One of Daniel's major concerns was to explain the process of history. Didn't want that. Oh, man. Retarded. All right. We'll do that. One of Daniel's major concerns was to explain the process of history using insights gained from Jeremiah. See Daniel chapter 9, verse 2. He placed Jewish history in the setting of the sequence of world empires and showed how the Lord was working out his will amidst the affairs of world history. Daniel wanted to encourage the exiled Jews to believe they still had a future in God's sovereign purposes. Christians are able to see in these prophecies that this future is fulfilled in the coming of Christ. Outline 1. Events during Nebuchadnezzar's reign. Chapter 1, verse 1 through chapter 4, verse 37. 2. On the eve of Babylon's fall. Chapter 5, verses 1 through 30. 3. Daniel on trial. Chapter 5, verse 31. Chapter 5, verse 31 through chapter 6, verse 28. 4. Visions during Belshazzar's reign. Chapter 7, verse 1 through chapter 8, verse 27. 5. Daniel's prayer and the 70 weeks. 9. Chapter 9, verse 1 through 27. Chapter 6. Roman numeral 6. Daniel's final revelation. Chapter 10, verse 1 through chapter 12, verse 13. Daniel chapter 1. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, and we're going to go with that, king of Judah into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, of the king's seed, and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, in whom they might teach the learning in the tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat, and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among these were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael, Meshach, and unto Azariah, Abednego. And Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who hath appointed your meat and your drink. For why should we see your faces worse liking than the children which are of your sort? Then shall ye make me endanger my head to the king. Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat, and water to drink. And let our countenances be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat. And as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he consented to them in this matter, and proved them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in the flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse. As for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. As these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Now at the end of the days that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince and the eunuchs brought them in for Nebuchadnezzar. And the king communed with them. And among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. And Daniel continued even until the first year of King Cyrus. Daniel chapter 2. And in the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. Then the king commanded to all the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king of Syriac, O king, live forever. Tell thy servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. And the king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If ye will not make known unto me the dream, with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. But if ye show the dream and the interpretation thereof, ye shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. They answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation of it. The king answered and said, I know of a certainty that ye would gain the time, because ye see the thing is gone from me. But if ye will not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you. For ye have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me, till the time be changed. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that ye can know me, can show me, and I shall know that ye can show me the interpretation thereof. The Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asks such things as at any magician or astrologer or Chaldean. And it is a rare thing that the king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. For this cause the king was very angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain. And they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. Then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, which was gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Arioch made the thing known to Daniel. Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time, and that he would show the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for his wisdom and might are his, and he changeth the times of the seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers, who has given me wisdom and might, and has made known unto me now what we desired of thee, for thou hast now made known unto us the king's matter. Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. We went and said thus unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show unto you, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah, that will make known unto the king the interpretation. The king answered and said unto Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, whose name was Belteshazzar. Art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen, and the interpretation thereof? Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, The secret which the king hath demanded, cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers, show unto the king? But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are these. As for thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, what should come to pass hereafter. And he that revealeth secrets maketh known to thee what shall come to pass. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation of the king, and that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. The great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. The image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon the feet that were of the iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for For the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth king shall be strong as iron, forasmuch as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things. And as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. But there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it brake in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure. Then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel, and commanded that they should offer an oblation and sweet odors unto him. The king answered unto Daniel and said, of a truth it is, that your God is a God of gods, and Lord of kings, and revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldst reveal this secret. Then the king made Daniel a great man, and gave him many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. Then Daniel requested of the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. Okay. Okay. Job chapter 18. Job chapter 18. These He then answered Bildad the Shuhite, how long will it be ere ye make an end of words? Mark, and afterwards we will speak. Wherefore are we counted as beasts and reputed vile in your sight? He teareth himself in his anger. Shall the earth be forsaken for thee? And shall the rock be removed out of his place? Yea, the light of the wicked shall be put out, and the spark of his fire shall not shine. The light shall be dark in his tabernacle, and his candle shall be put out with him. The steps of his strength shall be straightened. And his own counsel shall cast him down. For he is cast into a net by his own feet, and he walketh upon a snare. The gin shall take him by the heel, and the robber shall prevail against him. The snare is laid for him in the ground, and a trap for him in the way. Terrors shall make him afraid on every side, and shall drive him to his feet. His strength shall be hunger bitten, and destruction shall be ready at his side. It shall devour the strength of his skin, even the firstborn of death shall devour his strength. His confidence shall be rooted out of his tabernacle, and it shall bring him to the king of terrors. It shall dwell in the tabernacle, because it is none of his. Brimstone shall be scattered upon his habitation. His roots shall be dried up beneath, and above shall his branch be cut off. His remembrance shall perish from the earth, and he shall have no name in the street. He shall be driven from light into darkness, and chased out of the world. He shall neither have son or nephew among his people, nor any remaining in his dwellings. They that come after him shall be astonished, shall be astonied at this day, at his day. As they that went before were affrighted. Surely such are the dwellings of the wicked, and this is the place of him that knoweth not God. Okay. All right. Political action step number 9. The electoral voting options to bypass political action step number 9. Use electoral voting options to bypass elected officials and political institutions. One of the biggest political failings of Black America over the last half of a century is that it has been too quiet. The majority of society began implementing its benign neglect policy in the early 1970s. This public policy, which declared Black Americans as obsolete and an obsolete and abandoned labor force, shifted white society's moral commitments from blacks to gender, class, ethnic, and language groups. Blacks seem politically paralyzed by this unexpected shift. The black leadership leading the shift, then later seeking to ally with the new class minorities that they had created, a problem arose with black leadership leading the shift, with black leadership leading the shift, then later seeking to ally with the new class minorities that they had created, a problem arose. In any competitive environment, an individual or group that is non competitive is sure to become extinct. Black Americans are leaderless for all practical purposes. Black Americans must again become active and force those holding political office to be responsible to the needs and concerns of black people. We need to initiate more direct action, whether we exercise electoral voting options, alter consumer patterns, or even use forms of civil disobedience. For example, we used boycotts and civil disobedience reasonably well generations ago. These acts can still grab the public's attention, but they become wasted efforts when there are no tangible goals and follow-up activities. These old tactics would probably be more effective if they were used in combination with some of our voting options and power. There are a number of special voting rights that are tools we can use to accomplish our political will, such as voter referenda, initiatives, recalls, public hearings, selective withdrawal of patronage, lawsuits, and ballot write-ins. We should employ these special electoral devices to counteract laws, public policies, and public office holders who conflict with our interests. The laws regarding special rights vary greatly, but all of them are tools we can use to gain some degree of control over our lawmakers and hold them accountable. Through an initiative, for instance, voters can introduce a law. Through a referendum, can introduce a law. Through a referendum, the voters can approve or reject a proposed law. Though a recall, the voters can have an elected official, can take an elected official out of office before his term expires. Voters can seek injunctive relief through a lawsuit. A dissatisfied constituency can also affect the business revenue and the soft campaign funds political figures receive from corporate donors. A dissatisfied constituency can also affect the business revenue and the soft campaign funds political figures receive from corporate donors. These special rights allow allow any disenchanted citizens to take direct action against government representatives. Any concerned black individual or group can file a lawsuit. The same is true for recalls, referenda and initiatives, though they must use approved language on the petitions, meet time requirements, and select a specific number of certifiable signatures of registered voters. Once collected, the petitions are usually presented to a city council or similar body for acceptance. Then an initiative when an initiative has been accepted, neither the mayor nor the governor can veto the initiatives. Recalls can be a good beginning point to confront elected officials who are unwilling to address or respond to the needs and interests of a black minority. You do not need to be a majority to get a public official's attention. Only a small number of signatures of registered voters are required to recall an election. The recall effort itself and the possibility of creating a runoff election are sometimes enough to convince elected officials to respect and address the concerns of black voters. If it is not possible to hold the official accountable, with a recall, we can shift our focus of accountability to individuals and businesses that supported the candidate. If, for instance, a black minister or local official persuades the black community to support a candidate, they should be held responsible for making sure the candidate honors commitments made to the black community. It is also effective to turn the same attention to the elected officials' financial supporters. Applying the rule, don't treat any person or group better than they treat you. Black voters can orchestrate economic sanctions or withdraw their patronage from companies and their products until they hold the candidate accountable. Even if blacks intend to withhold their votes, they should still register to vote because only voting provides access to these special voters' rights. Armed with these tools, we can begin to hold lawmakers and their supporters accountable or bypass them to get our issues and concerns into the political marketplace. In a real sense, however, our country's majority rule voting system is a charade when public policies make black people a permanent minority. The concept of majority rules is an expedient but misleading and imperfect expression of equality of opportunity. If laws and social customs placed 6 whites and 1 black in a room and gave them the right to vote on issues and candidates, and if 6 whites agreed to vote as a skin color group only for white candidates and white issues, it is a cruel joke in a democratic society to tell the one black that he has an equal opportunity to vote and run for office. The 6 white voters can claim they are fair because the black has equal voting rights. In reality, If he votes in his own self-interest, his vote is null and void because he is a minority of one. The only time he can win is when his interests align with the interests of whites. The equal opportunity to vote is an exercise in futility when the deck is stacked so that blacks can never win or prevail. When blacks are made a permanent minority, the voting system ought to be weighed so that one black vote carries proportional weight, maybe three to one, over groups that have competing interests and lack the historical past of blacks. It is an insult and compromises blacks to vote in a system where they are constantly voting on white issues, concerns, and candidates. The ultimate voting option black people have is to call for a boycott of a national election to dramatize the dilemma of black voters and the futility they feel when they vote. Worse, with each passing day and each newly arriving legal and illegal immigrant, the black voting power becomes more and more insignificant. When blacks are bumped from a majority minority to a minority in a couple of years by Hispanics, then later by Asians, Black American votes will become strictly an exercise in futility. Blacks' best hope is to act today, to dramatize their plight in hopes of changing the immigration laws or weighting their votes. Otherwise, Black Americans can soon forget about voting. A dramatized boycott of a national election could call attention to the fact that blacks may be legally able to vote, but the political candidates and parties are not willing to address the issues and injustices committed against black people. And worse, their votes are used as a swing vote to help one political party or the other win an office, but never in exchange for benefits for the race. Once the election is over, they are again forgotten, then trotted out for the next close election. The electoral boycott would communicate to blacks and whites throughout the United States that blacks will not play a game in which they can neither win nor benefit. It would communicate to international circles that Black America is the cradle of democracy for everybody but black people. Political action step number 10. Political action step number 10. Voting rights and political will. Discuss that again. It's very interesting what they're doing. Political action step number 10. Compete with the two major political parties by forming a national black independent party as an alternative voting channel. In national politics, there is a long-held common belief that regardless of how this nation's political parties treat black American voters, they accept it because they have no alternative. Black voters are unwanted political pawns. For over a century, one political party rejected blacks while the other national party tolerated their membership. Blacks were spectators whose sole contribution was limited to a swing vote. in a close race between white candidates. But contrary to common belief, black voters do have somewhere to go. They can join the half of this nation's eligible voters who simply refuse to vote. Or black voters can turn the tables on the two national parties and instead of waiting to be used, rejected, or tolerated, blacks can do blacks can do the rejecting. Blacks must blacks black vote black votes may be irrelevant, but if we apply the principles of ethno-aggregation, we can create some alternatives. Through a divorce proceeding, though a though a di- div, though a div, though a divorce proceeding has yet to be announced, the marriage between the Democratic Party and Black America, which was consummated in the 1940s, is on the rocks. The Democratic Party has been unfaithful to Black America. Instead of taking care of its home base of loyal black voters, the Democratic Party downgraded black rights and took up with every gender, gender, and language issue group, regardless of their party affiliations. The Democratic Party and black civil rights leaders brought down an array of minority and women competitors upon the back of blacks before they had a chance to catch up from centuries of slavery and Jim Crow segregation. What can the Democratic or Republican parties do for black people in the 21st century? Contrary to the advice of traditional civil rights liberals who encourage black voters to stay in a failed marriage and conservatives who advocate that blacks divide themselves between the two national parties, thus diluting their power. Contrary to the advice of traditional civil rights liberals who encourage black voters to stay in a failed marriage and conservatives who advocate that blacks divide themselves between the two national parties, thus diluting their voting power, black voters should reject both options. Instead, black voters must ethno-aggregate and become totally independent, forcing both parties to court them. It is 2:49. The basis for a black independent party. The basis for a black independent party. Black Americans view political partisanship differently from white Americans. Black Americans believe in strong loyalty even with no fixed quid pro quo benefits. White Americans believe in strong quid pro quo benefits with no fixed party loyalties. Whites will shift their party loyalties with the speed of light to get benefits. Blacks have shifted loyalties several times. From 1619 until 1865, black people were enslaved and did not belong to any national political party. From 1868 until around 1936, from 1868 until around 1936, most black Americans belonged to the Republican Party, and they were subjected to Jim Crow segregation. From around 1946 until present time, most black Americans belong to the Democratic Party, and they have been neglected. 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 All right. Figure 19, building a black independent party. Democrats built Republicans. Y'all come back here. Y'all come back here. Y'all come back here. Independent Black Party. All right. Quite clearly, that counts. Quite clearly, what counts is not the political party to which we belong, but the fact that we have never had enough political power to do anything within those parties. Clearly, there has been no visible and direct connection between blacks supporting a national political party and receiving benefits from the party. In the mid-1980s, so-called progressive Democrats decided to shift the party away from black people and the image that whites had of the Democratic Party as the party of blacks. In a move that should have been seen as an affront to blacks, powerful white Democrats created the Democratic Leadership Council for the specific purpose of moving the Democratic Party away from black people and to the center of the political road. The Democratic Party is in a conflicted situation. It is seeking middle-class white votes while still depending on the black vote, even though the party is moving in a more conservative white direction. Both major political parties have demonstrated unwillingness to implement a black agenda that provides material benefits to black people. So the choice blacks should exercise is to pull out of both parties and start an independent national black party that practices the group-based politics in gaining resources, using powernomics principles and strategies as the foundation for an independent political framework. Blacks will have a guide to structure their party in their own self-interest. When they are not tied to any of the major national parties, there are a number of activities for a black independent party to consider to gain recognition, respect, and political power. First, this will be a vehicle to implement Step 9 above, boycott a national election. The new party can use this platform to recruit membership. Second, blacks should establish a national planning committee made up of academicians and other black stakeholders to build upon the base concept of self-sufficient and competitive black America. A number of committed blacks began the framework for a political party at the National Black Political Convention movement that was held in Gary, Indiana in 1972. This effort did not get off the ground at the time because too many black attendees believed in the Democratic Party and the integration dream. Third, while the Black Party is building, we must be realistic. Black politicians and leaders will not eagerly jump ship and lose their positions in the political parties until it is clear that the new Black Party is strong. They will need some flexibility, but Black people will seek accountability. Accountability. There is value in the leaders continuing to affiliate with the major national parties for a while. They must declare their commitment to Black causes and their intent to join the Black Party. They can practice being Black and change directions while negotiating benefits for Black America. When the new party is ready, those who choose should become part of it. 4. After the Black Party is operational, Blacks should direct their efforts to register as independents within a Black Party. 5th, Blacks then inform both Republican and Democratic parties that they will vote as a solid bloc for their own candidates or party. Or in the absence of a Black candidate committed to the Powernomics vision for Black America, they will vote for candidates or party that promises to deliver the most. 6, Black voters should not identify or announce the candidate they will support for public office until a few days before the election. With that strategy, it is not as likely that the Black vote will be taken for granted. 7th, Blacks should place candidates for public office on the ballot in all key states. 8th, Blacks should run strong Black candidates to compete against other national parties. And finally, Blacks should always vote as a bloc. Then a national Black Party would give Blacks a strategic and competitive advantage over the established national parties. Black candidates can run and win a national office from an independent party. Voter apathy, both Black and white, is at an all-time high. Less than 50% of those eligible to vote do in fact vote. The fastest growing voter categories in America are independent and non-affiliated. A recent poll showed that 36% of the electorate in 1992 would have voted for Ross Perot, a candidate for an independent party, if they thought he had a chance to win. In major elections, Black candidates would be major contenders if Blacks committed to register, turn out, and vote at 3 times our current rate, similar to Jewish voters. Jews are approximately 3% of the national population, but they come out and vote at a rate that is three times greater than any other group. Blacks could have a similar impact if we use the same strategy. Blacks make up approximately 12.4% of the population. In national elections, majority white voters split their 80% voting populations between the Democrats, Republicans, Reform, and Green parties. Normally, only 25% of Blacks who are eligible actually vote. If all things were equal, each party would receive 20% of the votes cast. If all blacks were members of a National Black Party, and if they registered and voted at three times their normal pattern, they would have a major impact on any election. Blacks would get another benefit similar because the existing national parties would be concerned about the potential impact of a black independent party on an election. They would either court black voters with more serious intentions of practicing quid pro quo, or they would eliminate some of their existing national parties. Either way, a national black vote, a national black bloc vote, and a black independent party could serve to highlight our views and give us the benefit of ethno aggregation in politics. Once the bloc party is established, it should host its own political conventions, especially for the election of the President of the United States. These conventions should be scheduled for the month of June, prior to both the Republican and Democratic conventions, perhaps to commemorate Juneteenth. Juneteenth celebrations relate to the day blacks in Texas got the news about the Emancipation Proclamation. Increasingly, blacks are celebrating that historical event as a national holiday. A convention for an independent party would have the competitive advantage of coming before other parties, laying a foundation for national issues and setting a political tone. Most black elected officials and civil rights leaders will be reluctant to identify with or attend any black party activities because both groups are locked into the Democratic Party. With or without them, Black Americans have little choice but to press on in their own best interest. On the leg, boys. All right. All right, y'all. Ooh. All right. Turn that off. You're coming with me. You're coming with me. That's what I'm talking about. All right, go on, AI. Go on, AI. You guys are coming with me. You're coming with me, coming with me. Bonjour, bonjour, le jour. Serai entendre un sévère. Radio mon champagne, un bachelor. Mon Dieu. Son Dieu. Paris. 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 Bon Dieu, à tout à l'heure, à bientôt. Je voudrais Alcine avec mes amis. Je vais Alcine avec mes amis. Je voudrais un croque-monsieur, s'il vous plaît. Je vais Alcine avec mes amis.
Then Delilah said to Samson, "Until now,
All right,
you mocked me
Joe.
and told me lies. Tell me how you might be bound." And he said to her, "If you weave the 7 locks of my head with the web and fasten it tight with a pin, Then I shall become weak and be like any other man. So while he slept, Delilah took the
Samson.
7 locks of his
Around
head
with
and
these
wove
women.
them into the web. And she made them tight with a pin and said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." But he awoke from his sleep and pulled away the pin, the loom,
Mess
and the
around.
web. And she said to him,
Not being about your business.
"So I love you when your heart is not with me. You have mocked me these 3 times, and you have not told me where your great strength lies." And when she pressed him hard with her words day after day,
Don't tell her,
urged
Samson.
him, his soul was vexed to death.
Don't listen.
And he told her all his heart and said
Oh,
to
why
her,
you do that?
"A razor has never come
Why
upon
you
my
do that,
head,
Samson?
for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's
Why
womb.
you do
If my head is
that?
shaved, then my strength will
Why?
leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man." When Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, "Come up again, for he has told me all his heart." Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought the money in their hands. She made him sleep on her knees, and she called a man and had him shave off the 7 locks of his head. Then she began to torment him, and his strength left him. And she said, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." And he awoke from his sleep and said, "I will go out as at other times and shake myself free." But he did not know that the Lord had left him.
Don't
And
leave
the
me.
Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes, and brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze shackles. And he ground at the mill in the prison. But the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. Now the lords of the Philistines gathered to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon their god, and to rejoice. And they said, "Our God has given Samson our enemy into our hand." And when the people saw him, they praised their God. For they said, "Our God has given our enemy into our hand, the ravager of our country, who has killed many of us." And when their hearts were merry, they said, "Call Samson that he may entertain us." So they called Samson out of the prison, and he entertained them. They made him stand between the pillars. And Samson said to the young man who held him by the hand, "Let me feel the pillars on which the house rests, that I may lean against them." Now the house was full of men and women. All the lords of the Philistines were there, and on the roof there were about 3,000 men and women who looked on while Samson entertained. Then Samson called to the Lord and said, "O Lord God, please remember me and please strengthen me only this once, O God, that I may be avenged on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." And Samson grasped the 2 middle pillars on which the house rested, and he leaned his weight against them, his right hand on the one and his left hand on the other. And Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." Then he bowed with all his strength, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people who were in it. So the dead whom he killed at his death were more than those whom he had killed during his life. Then his brothers and all his family came down and took him and brought him up and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoah his father. He had judged Israel 20 years. Chapter 17. There was a man of the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Micah. And he said to his mother, "The 1,100 pieces of silver that were taken from you, about which you uttered a curse and also spoke it in my ears, behold, the silver is with me. I took it." And his mother said, "Blessed be my son by the Lord." And he restored the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother. And his mother said, "I dedicate the silver to the Lord from my hand for my son, to make a carved image and a metal image. Now therefore I will restore it to you." So when he restored the money to his mother took 200 pieces of silver and gave it to the silversmith, who made it into a carved image and a metal image. And it was in the house of Micah. And the man Micah had a shrine, and he made an ephod and household gods, and ordained one of his sons who became his priest. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Now there was a young man of Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah, who was a Levite, and he sojourned there. And the man departed from the town of Bethlehem in Judah to sojourn where he could find a place. And as he journeyed, he came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah. And Micah said to him, Where do you come from? And he said to him, I am a Levite of Bethlehem in Judah, and I am going to sojourn where I may find a place. And Micah said to him, Stay with me and be to me a father and a priest, and I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year, and a suit of clothes and your living. And the Levite went in, and the Levite was content to dwell with the man, and the young man became to him like one of his sons. And Micah ordained the Levite, and the young man became his priest and was in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, Now I know that the Lord will prosper me, because I have a Levite as priest.
Please log on to wowie.com now.
Chapter
so your
18.
Super Tractor can automatically track your progress.
In those days there was no king in Israel. And in those days the tribe of the people of Dan was seeking for itself an inheritance to dwell in. For until then no inheritance among the tribes of Israel had fallen to them. So the people of Dan sent 5 able men from the whole number of their tribes, from Zorah and from Eshtaol, to spy out the land and to explore it. And they said to them, Go and explore the land. And they came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and lodged there. When they were by the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young Levite. And they turned aside and said to him, Who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? What is your business here? And he said to them, This is how Micah dealt with me. He has hired me, and I have become his priest. And they said to him, Inquire of God, please, that we may know whether the journey on which we are setting out will succeed. And the priest said to them, Go in peace. The journey on which you go is under the eye of the Lord. Then the 5 men departed and came to Laish, and saw the people who were there, how they lived in security, after the manner of the Sidonians, quiet and unsuspecting, lacking nothing that is in the earth, and possessing wealth, and how they were far from the Sidonians, and had no dealings with anyone. And when they came to their brothers at Zorah and Eshtaol, their brothers said to them, What do you report? They said, Arise and let us go up against them, for we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. And will you do nothing? Do not be slow to go, to enter in and possess the land. As soon as you go, you will come to an unsuspecting people. The land is spacious, for God has given it into your hands, a place where there is no lack of anything that is in the earth. So 600 men of the tribe of Dan, armed with weapons of war, set out from Zorah and Eshtaol, and went up and encamped at Kiriath Jearim in Judah. On this account that place is called Mehanidan to this day. Behold, it is west of Kiriath Jearim. And they passed on from there to the hill country of Ephraim, and came to the house of Micah. Then the 5 men who had gone to scout out the country of Laish said to their brothers, Do you know that in these houses there are an ephod, household gods, a carved image, and a metal image? Now therefore consider what you will do. And they turned aside there and came to the house of the young Levite, at the home of Micah, and asked him about his welfare. Now the 600 men of the Danites, armed with their weapons of war, stood by the entrance of the gate. And the 5 men who had gone to scout out the land went up and entered and took the carved image, the ephod, the household gods, and the metal image, while the priest stood by the entrance of the gate with the 600 men armed with weapons of war. And when these went into Micah's house and took the carved image, the ephod, the household gods, and the metal image, the priest said to them, What are you doing? And they said to him, Keep quiet, put your hand on your mouth, and come with us, and be to us a father and a priest. Is it better for you to be priest to the house of one man, or to be priest to a tribe and clan in Israel? And the priest's heart was glad. He took the ephod and the household gods and the carved image, and went along with the people. So they turned and departed, putting the little ones and the livestock and the goods in front of them. When they had gone a distance from the home of Micah, the men who were in the houses near Micah's house were called out, and they overtook the people of Dan. And they shouted to the people of Dan, who turned around and said to Micah, What is the matter with you that you come with such a company? And he said, "You take my gods that I made and the priest and go away, and what have I left? How then do you ask me, what is the matter with you?" And the people of Dan said to him, "Do not let your voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows fall upon you, and you lose your life with the lives of your household." Then the people of Dan went their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back to his home. But the people of Dan took what Micah had made and the priest who belonged to him, and they came to Laish, to a people quiet and unsuspecting, and struck them with the edge of the sword and burned the city with fire. And there was no deliverer, because it was far from Sidon, and they had no dealings with anyone. It was in the valley that belongs to Beth-rehob. Then they rebuilt the city and lived in it, and they named the city Dan, after the name of Dan, their ancestor, who was born to Israel. But the name of the city was Laish at first. And the people of Dan set up the carved image for themselves, and Jonathan the son of Gershom, son of Moses, and his sons were priests to the tribe of the Danites until the day of the captivity of the land. So they set up Micah's carved image that he made, as long as the house of God was at Shiloh.
And up, take a deep breath to center.
Chapter 19. In those days, when there was no king in Israel, a certain Levite was sojourning in the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim, who took to himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. And his concubine was unfaithful to him, and she went away from him to her father's house at Bethlehem in Judah, and was there some 4 months. Then her husband arose and went after her to speak kindly to her and bring her back. He had with him his servant and a couple of donkeys, and she brought him into her father's house. And when the girl's father saw him, he came with joy to meet him. And his father-in-law, the girl's father, made him stay, and he remained with him 3 days. So they ate and drank and spent the night there. And on the 4th day they arose early in the morning, and he prepared to go. But the girl's father said to his son-in-law, "Strengthen your heart with a morsel of bread, and after that you may go." So the two of them sat and ate and drank together. And the girl's father said to the man, "Be pleased to spend the night, and let your heart be merry." And when the man rose up to go, his father-in-law pressed him till he spent the night there again. And on the 5th day he arose early in the morning to depart. And the girl's father said, "Strengthen your heart and wait until the day declines." So they ate, both of them. And when the man and his concubine and his servant rose up to depart, his father-in-law, the girl's father, said to him, "Behold, now the day is waned toward evening. Please spend the night. Behold, the day draws to its close. Lodge here and let your heart be merry, and tomorrow you shall arise early in the morning for your journey and go home." But the man would not spend the night. He rose up and departed and arrived opposite Judas, that is, Jerusalem. He had with him a couple of saddled donkeys, and his concubine was with him. When they were near Judas, the day was nearly over, and the servant said to his master, "Come now, let us turn aside to the city of the Jebusites and spend the night in it." And his master said to him, "We will not turn aside into the city of foreigners, who do not belong to the people of Israel, but we will pass on to Gibeah."
Nice form. Look at that.
And he said to his young man,
Usually a little bit lower. You
"Come and let us draw near to one of these places and spend the night at Gibeah or at Ramah." So they passed on and went their way.
Nice.
And the sun went down on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. And they turned aside there to go in and spend the night at Gibeah. And he went in and sat down in the open square of the city, for no one took him into his house to spend the night. And behold, an old man was coming from his work in the field at evening. The man was from the hill country of Ephraim, and he was sojourning in Gibeah. The men of the place were Benjaminites. And he lifted up his eyes and saw the traveler in the open square of the city. And the old man said, "Where are you going? And where do you come from?" And he said to him, "We are passing from Bethlehem in Judah to the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim, from which I come. I went to Bethlehem in Judah, and I am going to the house of the Lord, but no one has taken me into his house. We have straw and feed for our donkeys, with bread and wine for me and your female servant, and the young man with your servants. There is no lack of anything."
Bend those knees a little bit.
And the old man said, "Peace be to you. I will care for all your wants. Only do not spend the night in the square." So he brought him into his house and gave the donkeys feed. And they washed their feet and ate and drank.
As they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, worthless fellows, surrounded the house, beating on the door.
Just like that.
And they said to the old man,
Make sure
the
the arms
master of the house,
already
bring
straight
out the
away.
man who
Here we go.
came into your house, that we may know him.
Bend
And
those
the
knees just
man,
a
the
touch.
master of the house, went out to them and said to them,
Get that chest up.
No, my
Get up.
brothers,
Nice, good.
do not act
Good
so
form, both
wickedly.
knees are bent, one foot
Since
in
this
front of the
man
other.
has come into
The
my
reason why you put
house,
one foot in front of
do
the
not
other
do
is because
this
it helps your
vile
back.
thing.
If your legs are locked
Behold,
straight,
here are my
pressure
virgin
will go
daughter
back.
and his concubine. Let me bring them out now. Violate them and do with them what seems good to you. But against this man, do not do this outrageous thing. But the man would not listen to him.
That's it.
So the man seized his concubine and made her go out to them. And they knew her and abused her all night until the morning. And as the dawn began to break, they let her go.
Left hand's on the hip, we're gonna start with
And
the
as
right
morning
hand.
appeared, the woman came and fell down at the door of the man's house where her master was, until it was light.
Down.
And her master rose up in the morning, and when he opened the doors of the house and went out to go on his way, behold, there was his concubine lying at the door of the house, with her hands on the threshold. He said to her, Get up, let us be going. But there was no answer.
Looking good.
Then he put her on the
Nice and
donkey, and the
straight
man
from
rose
ear to
up
ear.
and went away to his
Heads up,
home.
chest up, knees are bent.
And when he entered his house, he took a knife, and taking hold of his concubine, he divided her limb by limb into 12 pieces, and sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. And all who saw it said, Such a thing has never happened or been seen from the day that the people of Israel came up out of the land of Egypt until this day. Consider it, take counsel, and speak.
So, you guys are done. Pop off to the other side. Switch
Chapter
the
20.
feet. Right hand's on the hip. Reach it up
Then all the
tall.
people of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba, including the land of Gilead, and the congregation assembled as one man to the Lord at Mizpah.
Bend those
And the
knees, you
chiefs
guys.
of all the
It's really
people,
important.
of
Never
all
shake
the
the
tribes
ground.
of
These
Israel,
exercises.
presented themselves in the
Good. You got
assembly of the
shoulders,
people
remember,
of
you can
God,
always do a kick back exercise like
400,000
this.
men on foot that drew the sword. Now the people of Benjamin heard that the people of Israel had gone up to Mizpah.
Knees are
And the
bent.
people of Israel said,
You guys are perfect. You don't need any
Tell
hands.
us,
They're
how did
fantastic.
this evil happen?
It's really good.
And the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said,
Make sure you breathe.
I came to Gibeah that belongs to Benjamin, I and my concubine, to spend the night. And the leaders of Gibeah rose against me and surrounded the house against me by night.
Last one.
They meant to kill me, and they violated my concubine, and she is dead. So I took hold of my concubine and cut her in pieces, and sent her throughout all the country of the inheritance of Israel.
Nice and tall.
For they have committed
There we go.
abomination and outrage in Israel.
These are the end.
Behold, you people of Israel, all of you, give your advice and counsel here.
Boom. Let's turn.
And all the people arose as one man, saying,
Right leg.
None of us will go to his
Back legs are
tent,
nice and straight,
and none of
guys.
us will return
Boom.
to
Make
his
sure that knee's
house.
over the ankle.
But now this is what we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot,
Back leg
and
straight.
we will take 10 men of 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel,
A little bit, Sean.
and 100 of
Nice.
1,000,
Turn for me.
and 1,000 of
Let's see, going
10,000,
back.
to bring provisions for the people, that when they come they may repay Gibeah of Benjamin for all the outrage that they have committed in Israel.
And turn. Last one. Come on.
So all the men of Israel gathered against the city, united as one
Next
man.
one down like you. Come on. Bring it up.
And the tribes of Israel sent men through all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, What evil is this that has taken place among you? Now therefore give up the men, the worthless fellows in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and purge evil from
First
Israel.
thing we stretch, the quads.
But the Benjaminites would not listen to the voice of their brothers, the people of Israel. Then the people of Benjamin came together out of the cities to Gibeah to go out to battle against the people of Israel. And the people of Benjamin mustered out of their cities on that day 26,000 men who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who mustered 700 chosen men. Among all these were 700 chosen men who were left-handed. Everyone could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. And the men of Israel, apart from Benjamin, mustered 400,000 men who drew the sword. All these were men of war. The people of Israel arose and went up to Bethel and inquired of God,
Switch sides.
Who shall go up first for us to fight against the people of Benjamin? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up
Let's
first.
get the shoulders.
Then the people of Israel rose in the morning and encamped against Gibeah. And the men of Israel went out to fight against Benjamin. And the men of Israel drew up the battle line against them at Gibeah. The people of Benjamin came out of Gibeah and destroyed on that day 22,000 men of the Israelites. But the people, the men of Israel, took courage and again formed the battle line in the same place where they had formed it on the first day.
Okay, it looks like
And the people of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until the evening. And they inquired of the Lord, shall we again draw near to fight against our brothers, the people of Benjamin? And the Lord said, go up against them.
same as the first
So the
time.
people of Israel came near against the people of Benjamin the second day.
Nice and deep.
And Benjamin went against them out of Gibeah the second day, and destroyed 18,000 men of the people of Israel.
And
All these were men who drew the
you know,
sword.
these guys are getting the work out.
Then all the people of Israel, the whole army, went up and came to Bethel and wept. They sat there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And the people of Israel inquired of the Lord, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days, and Phinehas the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, ministered before it in those days, saying, shall we go out once more to battle against our brothers, the people of Benjamin, or shall we
We're
cease?
gonna pull back.
And the Lord said, go up, for tomorrow I will give them into your hand. So Israel set men in ambush around Gibeah, and the people of Israel went up against the people of Benjamin on the third day, and set themselves in array against Gibeah as at other times. And the people of Benjamin went out against the people and were drawn away from the city. And as at other times, they began to strike and kill some of the people on the highways, one of which goes up to Bethel and the other to Gibeah, and in the open country, about 30 men of Israel.
Top of the neck. We got a few more
And the
reps to
people
go.
of Benjamin said,
Here we go.
they are routed before us, as at the first. But the people of Israel said, let us flee and draw them away from the city to the highways.
It's like the
And all the men of Israel rose up out of their place and set themselves in array at Baal Tamar. And the men of Israel who were in ambush rushed out of their place from Meribah. And there came against Gibeah 10,000 chosen men out of all Israel, and the battle was hard. But the Benjaminites did not know that disaster was close upon them. And the Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel. And the people of Israel destroyed 25,100 men of Benjamin that day. All these were men who drew the sword. So the people of Benjamin saw that they were defeated. The men of Israel gave ground to Benjamin because they trusted the men in ambush whom they had set against Gibeah. Then the men in ambush hurried and rushed against Gibeah. The men in ambush moved out and struck all the city with the edge of the sword. Now the appointed signal between the men of Israel and the men in the main ambush was that when they made a great cloud of smoke rise up out of the city, the men of Israel should turn in battle.
Get your weights.
Now Benjamin had begun to strike and kill about 30 men of Israel. They said, surely they are defeated before us, as in the first battle. But when the signal began to rise out of the city in a column of smoke, the Benjaminites looked behind them, and behold, the whole of the city went up in smoke to heaven. Then the men of Israel turned, and the men of Benjamin were dismayed, for they saw that disaster was close upon them. Therefore they turned their backs before the men of Israel in the direction of the wilderness, but the battle overtook them. And those who came out of the cities were destroying them in their midst. Surrounding the Benjaminites, they pursued them and trod them down from Nohah as far as opposite Gibeah on the east. 18,000 men of Benjamin fell, all of them men of valor, and they turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon. 5,000 men of them were cut down in the highways, and they were pursued hard to guide them, and 2,000 men of them were struck down. So all who fell that day of Benjamin were 25,000 men who drew the sword, all of them men of valor. But 600 men turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon, and remained at the rock of Rimmon 4 months. The men of Israel turned back against the people of Benjamin, and struck them with the edge of the sword, the city, men and beasts, and all that they found. And all the towns that they found, they set on fire.
Also, remember, this exercise is tough, so lighten your weights a little bit.
Chapter
Build
21.
the shoulders and the triceps. We got 4 reps.
Now the
to
men
go.
of Israel
Here we
had
go.
sworn at Mizpah,
Jump back in.
no one of us shall give his daughter in marriage to Benjamin. And the people came to Bethel, and sat there till evening before God, and they lifted up their voices and wept bitterly. And they said, O Lord, the God of Israel, why has this happened in Israel, that today there should be one tribe lacking in Israel?
We do 3. Here
And
we
the
go.
next day the people rose early and built there an altar and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. And the people of Israel said,
Make sure you come all the way
which
up.
of all the tribes of Israel did not come up in the assembly to the Lord?
Go left,
For
left.
they had taken a great oath concerning him who did not come up to the Lord to Mizpah, saying,
Right, left.
He shall surely be put to death.
And
And the people of Israel had compassion for Benjamin their brother, and said,
no reason to rush
One
through
tribe
this.
is cut off from Israel this day.
Let's check the form.
What shall we do for wives for those who are left? Since we have sworn by the Lord that we will not give them any of our daughters for wives.
Right leg, back leg, straight
And
to
they
your
said,
neck, Sean. Let's see those
What
squats.
one is there of the tribes of Israel that did not come up to the Lord to Mizpah? And behold, no one had come to the camp from Jabesh Gilead to the assembly.
Let's see.
For when the people were mustered, behold, not one of the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead was
All
there.
right, last one, last time. Come on,
So the
bring it on.
congregation sent
Big
12,000
left,
of their
legs
bravest
gotta be
men
straight,
there, and
little
commanded
bit,
them,
3 squats.
Go and strike the inhabitants of
See, see how
Jabesh
they stand
Gilead
up
with
nice
the
and
edge of the
tall
sword,
every time? Hands
also
off
the women
balance.
and the little ones. This is what you shall
Good.
do. Every male and every woman
Get
that
around
has
two,
lain with
we're
a
gonna get
male,
little water
you shall
towel
devote to
break.
destruction.
So grab some water.
And they found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins who had not known a man by lying with him. They brought them to the camp at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan.
If you need to take breaks, that's okay.
Then the whole congregation sent word to the people of Benjamin who were at the rock of Rimmon,
Here we go.
and proclaimed peace to them.
We're going to our
And
stretch.
Benjamin returned at that
Quads
time,
first.
and they gave them the women whom they had saved alive of the women of Jabesh Gilead. But they were not enough for them,
Tall.
and the people had compassion on Benjamin, because the Lord had made a breach in the tribes of Israel. Then the elders of the congregation
Right
said,
hamstring and calf.
What shall we do for wives for those who are left,
Put you down.
since the women are destroyed out of Benjamin? And they said,
Switch on the side.
There must be an inheritance for the survivors of Benjamin, that a tribe not be blotted out from Israel.
Stand up tall.
Yet we cannot give them wives from our daughters, for the people of Israel had sworn, Cursed be he who gives a wife to Benjamin. So they said, Behold, there is the yearly feast of the Lord at Shiloh, which is north of Bethel on the east of the highway that goes up from Bethel to Shechem, and south of Lebonah.
Same kind
And
of
they commanded the people of Benjamin, saying, Go and lie in ambush in the vineyards and watch. If the daughters of Shiloh come out to dance in the dances, then come out of the vineyards and snatch each man his wife from the daughters of Shiloh, and go to the land of Benjamin.
Same thing.
And when their fathers or their brothers come to complain to us, we will say to them,
Good, good, good.
Grant them graciously to us, because we did not take for each man of them his wife in battle, neither did you give them to them, else you would now be guilty. And the people of Benjamin did so, and took their wives according to their number, from the dancers whom they carried off.
Elders gotta be really
Then they went and returned to their inheritance, and rebuilt the towns, and lived in
See,
them.
this you gotta get those elders.
And the people of Israel departed from there at that time, every man to his tribe and family, and they went out from there, every man to his inheritance. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Ruth, chapter 1. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. These took Moabite wives. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. They lived there about 10 years, and both Mahlon and Chilion died, so that the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, No, we will return with you to your people. But Naomi said, Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb, that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband.
just as good enough.
If I should say I have hope,
Could you guys?
even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me.
Might want to let me wait a little bit here.
Then they lifted up their voices and wept again.
8 to
And
15
Orpah
minutes.
kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her.
Just like that.
And she said, See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where
Great
you go,
exercise for
I will go,
shaping.
and where you lodge, I will
Trying to get
lodge.
Lisa's way here.
Your people shall be my
See how
people,
high her elbows are?
and your God,
She's not up
my
like
God.
this. Same thing with
Where
Sean.
you
Resistance
die, I
bands.
will die.
Great for
and
us.
there will I
You
be
really feel
buried.
it here, don't you?
May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you.
Breathing. See how wide she is?
And when Naomi saw that she was
Really
determined
nice.
to go with her,
Like you waist.
she said no more.
Great, guys. You got it.
So the two of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them.
Last year.
And the women said,
Get your weight
Is
to do it
this
21.
Naomi?
So it's a bicep
She
exercise.
said to them,
7
Do
low,
not call me
7 high,
Naomi.
7 all the way.
Call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi, when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?
Right to there.
So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her,
Notice,
who
knees
returned
always
from the
bent,
country of
back
Moab.
always straight, chest
And they
is
came to
always up,
Bethlehem
eyes
at the
forward.
beginning of
It's a
barley
great arm
harvest.
blast. It really shapes it. 7 low, now we go 7 high. You ready? Go 7 high. Go. Boom.
Chapter 2.
Stop right where my hand is.
Now Naomi had a relative of her husband, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him, in whose sight I shall find favor.
Good. Now you do the full
And
mind.
she said
Let's
to her,
go all the way up.
Go, my daughter.
All
So
the
she
way
set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers.
Sean.
And she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech.
We can grab some
And
chairs
behold,
for the
Boaz
few
came
kids.
from
We got 2
Bethlehem.
left. We do some
And he
dips.
said to the reapers,
Last one.
The Lord be with you.
Nice. Put your weights
And
away.
they
We're
answered,
going to dips.
The Lord bless
We're gonna
you.
triceps to the back of the shoulders.
Then Boaz said to his young man who was in charge of the reapers, Whose young woman is this?
Your hips.
And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, Oh, she is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers. So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest.
It's hard.
Then Boaz said to Ruth, Now listen, my daughter. Do not go to glean in another field, or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn. Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?
Each one.
But Boaz answered her,
You guys ready?
All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land, and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge.
The pain, but it's so good.
Then she said,
Sean, nice and tall.
I have found favor in your eyes, my
Make
Lord,
sure you aren't a pair of skis.
for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants.
Hands on the
And at mealtime Boaz said to her, Come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel in the wine. So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed to her roasted grain. And she ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over.
Looks really good.
When she rose to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, saying, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. And also pull out some from the bundles for her, and leave it for her to glean, and do not rebuke her. So she gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. And she took it up and went into the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also brought out and gave her what food she had left over after being satisfied.
Good form, guys.
And her mother-in-law said to her,
Last one.
Where did you glean today, and where have you worked?
Here comes
Blessed be the man who took notice of you. So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, "The man's name with whom I work today is Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." Naomi also said to her, "The man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers." And Ruth the Moabite said, "Besides, he said to me, 'You shall keep close by my young men until they have finished all my harvest.'" And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted." So she kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law. Chapter 3. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you? Is not Boaz our relative, with whose young women you were? See, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor."
Under judgment, man in dreadful corruption, and a descriptive analysis, a statistical analysis of what we do in our normal behavioral patterns only gives us the profile of a normal sinner. Again, is that normal sinner still the image of God? Or has the image by which we were created been lost? There's a lot of debate about that and among theologians, but there's no debate in Scripture. Scripture unambiguously, clearly teaches that after the fall, something radical happens to man, and we're going to spend a long time looking at that. But whatever else happens to man in the fall, man is still in the image of God. Now, how do we know that? Well, we know it simply because the Bible describes man as being in the image of God after the fall, at a most critical point. And I want to skip over to that for a second. Before I read this passage, I'd like to give a little comment on the side. With the abortion issue reaching zenith proportions in its crisis in America, it seems like every newspaper editorial has something to say about it. And I have seen a particular argument used now 3 or 4 times in editorials in major newspapers, where the writer has said that they have no respect for advocates of pro-life because of the major inconsistency in the pro-life movement. Namely, that many, if not all, but most, at least, of the advocates of pro-life, that is, who are opposed to abortion, are also in favor of the death penalty for capital crime. And the editorials, have you seen this in the papers where they say, how in the world, what a gross inconsistency. If these people are really pro-life, they're going to be picketing the penitentiaries where inmates are held and incarcerated on death row. When I read that perspective from the editors of the newspapers, I say, well, they just don't get it, do they? They don't understand that in the whole history of Christianity, the overwhelming majority report has been pro-life to such a degree that the church overwhelming majority report historically has been pro-capital punishment in the case of murder. I heard the governor of Pennsylvania, when the state legislature passed a bill restoring capital punishment in the case of first-degree murder in Pennsylvania, the governor vetoed it. And then when he gave a press conference, he said that the reason he vetoed it was because the Bible said, thou shalt not kill. He didn't read the next page, where the violation of the Decalogue, the violation of the prohibition against murder, was to be punished by death. And that goes back way before Moses, all the way back to what's called the Noahic covenant, when God restores his fallen universe, fallen creation, and sets the basic laws of creation anew for Noah and his family when he's more or less starting over. That's where capital punishment was instituted and ordained biblically. Now, I know that there are vast numbers of people who could care less what the Old Testament says about capital punishment, particularly as far back as the patriarchal period or even back into the period of Noah. But for those of you who do have some consideration for what the biblical warrant is, I think we need to at least try to understand it. That if I would say to people, whether you agree with Christianity, Judaism, or Islam or not, can you articulate for me why Judaism historically, Christianity historically, and Islam historically favored the death penalty? I can tell you what is not the reason. It's not because these world religions had a low view of life. The whole impetus for the death penalty in all three of those great religions has been out of a profound commitment to the sanctity of human life, all tracing their roots back to Genesis 9 now, which I will read for you. Beginning in verse 5, I will demand an accounting from every animal, and from each man too I will demand an accounting for the life of his fellow man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. Now let me just make a statement here. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. That is not a prophecy. The literary structure of this passage does not indicate that what the word is saying is that those who live by the sword will perish by the sword. So no, the literary structure here, the grammatical composition of that statement is in the imperative. God is issuing a command. If you willfully, maliciously shed the life of a human being, you forfeit yours. Now, I want you to follow the next clause. For in the image of God has God made me. In other words, the rationale God gives for capital punishment is that God regards a malicious assault on a human life, on an image bearer of God himself, as virtually an attack on his own dignity. What God is saying here is that if you murder my image bearer, you die. I require your death. In fact, the death penalty at this point in Israel was not optional. It was mandatory. Because, they said, God's demanding this because he said human life is so sacred that I will not tolerate the malicious destruction of human life. Now, again, I don't mean to turn this into a discussion of capital punishment, but I want you to see that how we understand the image of God and its significance, how we understand the holy foundation of a human life, will in large measure determine where you come out on abortion, where you come out on euthanasia, where you come out on capital punishment. And there is a consistency here. I had one person advocating pro-abortion told me that a discarded fetus is, quote, domestic sewage. Well, if it is domestic sewage, it doesn't exist. But if it's human, it's alive. And we're talking about the greatest ethical issue in the 20th century, if not in history. Okay, what does it mean when the Bible says we are created in the image and likeness of God? Notice that there were two words, image and likeness. Two Hebrew words, Salem and Demut, are used there in the text. In the Hebrew language, there is a common grammatical structure called a hendiadys, whereby one thing is defined by two distinct words that are similar. I would take the position on this passage that what the author of Genesis is saying is that there's one thing about man that is described here as being image and likeness. And the Greek here is icon and homoiousios, that we are icons of God in the sense that we resemble him. Now, how do we resemble? Some would reduce it to the abstract dimension, as I've indicated already, that we can think and God can think. We can choose and God can choose. We can love and God can love. The Mormons take it to mean that God has a body. Because if we're his image and we have bodies, then the original archetype must also have a body. Well, what is it that uniquely stamps us as the image of God? Well, I'm not going to answer that now. I'm just going to say that there is something special and vitally important and unique that Scripture speaks of again and again, wherein is invested our basic humanity. And I'll give you a hint of it before the next lecture. It has to do with our ability to mirror and to reflect the character of God. That the image that God gave to you, the likeness that he has put in you as a creature, is an ability to show what it means to be holy. Now, is that still there? We'll look at that in our next lesson.
Theology is not merely academic. Our theology has direct implications for how we live, how we treat each other, how we protect each other. So I'm glad you're joining us for Renewing Your Mind as R.C. Sproul unpacks the doctrine of man from his series, A Shattered Image. The message you heard today is one of 6 in that series, and there's also a study guide. So this could be a wonderful series to work through with your small group, youth group, or Bible study group, especially as we live in a time of great confusion when it comes to answering the question, who am I? Own this series for life and receive Dr. Sproul's book, The Hunger for Significance, when you donate today at renewingyourmind.org. Your support today fuels the outreach of Renewing Your Mind. So this book, series, and study guide is our way of saying thank you. Call us at 800-435-4343 with your donation, or give at renewingyourmind.org, or by using the link in the podcast show notes. And if you live outside of the U.S. and Canada, the series and study guide are available for you at renewingyourmind.org/global. Thank you for helping Christians grow in their knowledge of God's Word. I've heard recently from many grateful Christians from Malaysia, Singapore, the Philippines, and Australia who wouldn't be able to listen without your generosity. So on behalf of our global listening audience, thank you again. Is man body and soul, or body, soul, and spirit? Next time, R.C. Sproul continues exploring the makeup of man and what it means that we're made in the image of God. So don't miss Wednesday's episode here on Renewing Your Mind.
British Candle, written by Scott Hubbard. For those familiar with the English Reformation, the name Latimer sounds incomplete on its own. It demands a Ridley. Bishops Hugh Latimer and Nicholas Ridley are fastened together in history, primarily because they were fastened to the same stake on October 16th, 1555, on the north side of Oxford. But Latimer and Ridley share more than a martyrdom. The bishops also join each other on the list of England's most influential reformers, men and women whose allegiance to Scripture and the glory of Christ transformed England from a Catholic kingdom to a lighthouse of Reformation. Both Latimer and Ridley lived during the reigns of 4 English monarchs: Henry VII, Henry VIII, the one with all the wives, Edward VI, and Mary I, aka Bloody Mary. Both witnessed the Reformation's tug and pull under Henry VIII's tentative acceptance, Edward VI's warm embrace, and Mary I's violent resistance to Reformed doctrine. But they were anything but casual observers. Latimer, born around 1485, spent the first 30 years of his life a zealous Catholic, or, in his words, an obstinate papist. I was as obstinate a papist as any was in England, he wrote, insomuch that when I should be made Bachelor of Divinity, my whole oration was against Philip Melanchthon. But soon after Latimer's anti-Reformation oration, a young Cambridge divine named Thomas Bilney approached him with a request. Would Latimer allow Bilney to privately explain his own Reformed faith? Latimer agreed, and from then on he began to smell the word of God and forsook the school doctors and such fooleries. Latimer gathered up the arrows he had been shooting at the Reformation, and he started pointing the bow in the other direction. Throughout the next couple decades, he distinguished himself as a fervent Reformed preacher, at times enjoying Henry VIII's favor for it, and at other times fearing his persecution, depending on the king's mood. Perhaps the most fruitful years of Latimer's ministry came under Edward VI's short reign, from 1547 to 1553. Despite his age, Latimer assisted Archbishop of Canterbury Thomas Cranmer in reforming the English Church, and he also preached like a man who just couldn't stop. According to J.C. Ryle, no one of the reformers probably sowed the seeds of Protestant doctrine so widely and effectually among the middle and lower classes as Latimer. Then, in 1553, Queen Mary came to power, and Latimer was sent to a cell in the Tower of London. Ridley, nearly 20 years Latimer's junior, was born around 1502, near the border of Scotland. Throughout the next 5 decades, he would become one of England's sharpest intellects, even going so far as to memorize all the New Testament letters, in Greek. After attending Cambridge's Pembroke College in his teenage years, Ridley continued his studies in France, where he likely encountered Reformation teachings. Unlike Latimer, Ridley left no clear account of his passage from Catholic priest to Protestant preacher. But we do know that he signed the 1534 decree against the Pope's supremacy, that he accepted the post of chaplain to Archbishop Cranmer 3 years later, and that he renounced the Catholic doctrine of transubstantiation by 1545. When he became the Bishop of London in 1550, he replaced the stone altars in London's churches with plain wooden tables. According to Ridley and the Reformers, communion was a spiritual feast, not a sacrifice. Ridley's scholarly abilities launched him from one prestigious post to the next, even under Henry VIII's capricious reign. From Canterbury to Westminster to Soham to Rochester to London, Ridley studied, preached, and once Edward VI took the throne, threw himself into Cranmer's reforms. But then Queen Mary came to power, and Ridley joined Latimer in the Tower. On October 16, 1555, after spending 18 months in a Tower cell, Latimer and Ridley met at an Oxford stake. With Latimer in a frock and cap, and Ridley in his bishop's gown, the two men talked and prayed together before a smith lashed them to the wood. Ridley was the first to strengthen his friend. "Be of good heart, brother, for God will either assuage the fury of the flame, or else strengthen us to abide it." As the bundle of sticks caught fire beneath them, Latimer had his turn. Raising his voice so Ridley could hear, he cried, "Be of good comfort, Master Ridley, and play the man. We shall this day light such a candle, by God's grace in England, as I trust shall never be put out." 3 years later, Mary I died and passed the kingdom to her half-sister Elizabeth, a Protestant queen. And Latimer and Ridley's candle burst into a torch. You've been listening to Here We Stand, a series of 31 short biographies on heroes of the Protestant Reformation. This podcast has been produced by Desiring God in partnership with Bethlehem College and Seminary. For more, visit desiringgod.org/stand. The Reformation's Third Man, written by Michael Hagen. To cite the subtitle of a 1959 biography of the great Swiss reformer, Ulrich Zwingli has been very much the third man of the Reformation. As such, he has been overlooked to a significant degree by Reformation scholarship. That scholarship has found it easier to focus on Luther and Calvin, both of whom left a clear tradition. Moreover, Zwingli's martial approach to the reforming of the late medieval church, which culminated in his death on the battlefield at Kappel in October of 1531, is hardly a model for imitation. While Zwingli's fellow Swiss reformers sought to put Zwingli's violent death in the best possible light, other reformers, such as Martin Luther, were not so sanguine about what took place at Kappel. In Luther's words, Zwingli had died in great sin and blasphemy. The challenge of making sense of Zwingli's end reveals the Swiss reformer to be a complex figure whose story defies both hagiography and demonization. Zwingli's birthplace was some 40 miles from Zurich, in a typical Swiss chalet well over 3,000 feet above sea level. After high school in Basel, he attended the University of Vienna for 4 years, and then returned to Basel to study at the university there, a center of Renaissance scholarship. Under the influence of the scholar Thomas Wittenbach, Zwingli became committed to the Renaissance ideal of studying the sources of Western culture on antiquity, which led him to embrace the necessity of affirming sola scriptura for the reformation of the Church, though his own spiritual awakening was still to come. After the close of his formal academic studies in 1506, he received a call to be the priest in the rural parish of Glarus, where he was to remain until 1516. During this time, he began to seriously question the nature of late medieval Swiss society and its failure to reflect the Christianity of the scriptures. The Swiss supplied much of southern Europe with mercenaries. Indeed, the Vatican still has a Swiss guard. But with the young men away fighting for money and glory, their communities were being reduced to poverty. Such issues of societal and political declension and the need for community renewal set Zwingli on the road to the Reformation. A short spell at nearby Einsiedeln, the site of a popular shrine to the Virgin Mary, followed from 1516 to 1518. Sadly, this period ended amid well-founded accusations of sexual impropriety with the daughter of an influential figure in the community. A gift for preaching, though, led to Zwingli's appointment in late 1518 to the Grossmünster, the main church in the heart of Zurich,
a city home to some 7,000 people. From almost the very outset of his ministry in Zurich, Zwingli made expositional preaching the heart of his pastorate. In 1519, he also came across some treatises by Martin Luther that convinced him of justification by faith alone. To Zwingli at this time, Luther was nothing less than a new Elijah. But the Zwinglian Reformation was not ultimately dependent on Luther. In Zwingli's words, "If Luther has drunk where we have drunk, then he has in common with us the evangelical doctrine." In August of 1519, the Black Death, the bubonic plague, also struck Zurich, killing some 1,500 people. Zwingli himself was stricken and came near to death. Indeed, rumors outside Zurich placed him among the dead. But he recovered. It was a key turning point in his life, for he committed himself unreservedly to God and the implementation of his will in the Swiss town. As he wrote of God in November 1520, "I have learnt to submit myself utterly to his divine will." A second turning point came on the evening of March 9, 1522, during Lent, the traditional medieval time of preparation for Easter. That evening, one of Zwingli's friends had a simple meal of sausages with some other friends. But this was in defiance of church law, which forbade the eating of meat during Lent. Zwingli, who was present, did not partake, but neither did he object. In fact, the following month, Zwingli issued a short pamphlet defending the sausage eating that evening, and more generally affirming the freedom that God's people have in Christ. The key turning point came, however, in 1525, when the Mass was abandoned in Zurich. By this point, Zwingli, like Luther, had come to reject the medieval doctrine of transubstantiation, in which the Church of Rome argued that the bread and wine ceased to be bread and wine as they became the very body and blood of Christ. But whereas Luther was convinced that the Lord's Supper still conveyed the very body and blood of Christ along with real bread and wine, Zwingli believed that Christ's presence was spiritual and not corporeal. When the two German reformers met at Marburg in 1529, this difference proved to be a major roadblock to a union of these two remarkable men and their reformations. 2 years after this meeting that spelled the decisive division between the Lutheran and Reformed wings of the German Reformation, Roman Catholic troops marched on Zurich in the confidence that the Lutherans would not come to the aid of the Zurichers. Although Zwingli died in the ensuing conflict, the Zurich Reformation continued under his loyal co-worker, Heinrich Bullinger. And thus, Zwingli's passion for the scriptures and his determination to live solely under their authority became a key component of the Reformed tradition. You've been listening to Here We Stand, a series of 31 short biographies on heroes of the Protestant Reformation. This podcast has been produced by Desiring God in partnership with Bethlehem College and Seminary. For more, visit desiringgod.org/stand. The Accidental Reformer, written by Rick Siegel. Hans Gooseflesh came of age at the turn of the 14th and 15th centuries, when the prevailing spirit of the age was, God must be angry. His parents and grandparents were the generation that watched the Black Death eliminate a third of the continent's population. In some European villages, as many as 60% of the people perished. He was born into an upper-class family. Dad was a goldsmith, companion of the mint, they called him, a maker of coins and medallions. As he roamed around his father's shop as a boy, he no doubt marveled at and probably even assisted in the process of striking coins. Molten metal was poured into molds. Imagine tiny cake pans with scripts and images already debossed in the pans. The mold was made from a die strong enough to punch a clean impression of the coin onto it. The die itself was meticulously engraved by hand into tempered steel by craftsmen, using sharp jeweler-like tools capable of removing steel from steel as easily as shaving a butter pat from the stick. Alas, Hans was not to inherit the family business. An uprising of guildsmen against the employers, which included Hans's father, caused the family to relocate to Eltville. So Hans needed to seek other job opportunities. In the wake of the plague's devastation, Roman Catholicism fostered an extraordinary consumer market in religious goods and services. Beyond the peddling of everyday rosaries, tokens, icons, and crucifixes to supply the faithful and penitent, a booming tourist industry emerged, attracting hundreds of thousands of Catholic pilgrims eager to see relics recovered from the Holy Land. An ox eye was a badge with a mirror on it that you could wear when visiting displayed relics. The idea was if the mirror on the badge caught the reflection of a relic, well, how couldn't you be blessed? The Cathedral of Aachen housed 4 so-called great relics then, and still does. Mary's cloak, Christ's swaddling clothes, St. John's beheading cloth, and Christ's loincloth. Hans Gooseflesh formed a startup aimed at cornering the market for ox eyes at the 1439 Aachen pilgrimage, projected to draw more than 100,000 pilgrims. Leveraging his expertise in coin making, he planned to mass-produce 32,000 ox eyes and make a 2,500% profit on the venture. Unfortunately, it turned out to be a bad attendance year. The venture failed. Hans and his investors lost their shirts. But in the process of engineering ox eye production, they created some significant intellectual property. Knowledge transfer was shifting from oral transmission to inscribed manuals, directories, stories, and histories. People wanted books. Most of the demand was supplied by copyists and scribes who, when working earnestly, might be able to knock out a single, and we do mean single, volume of a Bible commentary once every 5 years. The innovation of woodblock printing helped the uptake of book supply, but woodblocks were unforgiving to error, easily breakable, and limited to a single use. Hans Gooseflesh made lemonade from the lemons of his failed ox eye startup. In the process of figuring out how to make souvenirs for the Aachen pilgrims, he conceived of a method of building forms into which a collection of metal characters could be racked to create, if you will, a metal block rather than a wood block that could be used to print sharp, readable words on a page, and then be unracked, reordered, and reused to create new forms for entirely different projects. It was a variation of the dye, mold, and punch making of his childhood, performed in miniature to muster legions of metal mercenaries perpetually ready for redeployment. Johannes Gensfleisch zur Leyden zum Gutenberg, anglicized here as Hans Gooseflesh, was dead 50 years before Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the door. He never preached a sermon, never authored a theological treatise. Indeed, Hans Gooseflesh, apart from his eponymous Gutenberg Bible, did a pattern business in printing papal indulgences. He was a reformer only by accident, or better, by common grace. But the printing industry's quick standardization to Gutenberg's system of movable type created a production and distribution capability that enabled Luther's titles to occupy 30% of an unheard of 7 million book market in Germany between 1518 and 1525. The Chinese had invented movable type 7 centuries before, but their writing system was too complex to make use of it. The Muslim world resisted the use of printing for 400 years after the invention of movable type. So in one unique window of human history, God raised up a ne'er-do-well tchotchke maker to pave the way for a spiritually tortured monk and his successors to reclaim the Word of God and reset the history of redemption. You've been listening to Here We Stand, a series of 31 short biographies on heroes of the Protestant Reformation. This podcast has been produced by Desiring God in partnership with Bethlehem College and Seminary. For more, visit desiringgod.org/stand.
Ordinary Virgin Mary, written by Tony Reinke. The drama of the Protestant Reformation casts big personalities and major characters, the types of men now etched into myths, legends, and giant stone figures. But the Reformation is also the story of everyday, ordinary followers of Christ, mostly forgotten, who lived out Reformation theology on the ground, and who paid the price for it with their lives. Martyrs like Helen Sturkey. Helen was a fairly average Scottish Christian in the city of Perth, dedicated to daily domestic work as a wife and mother. Her life remained unnoticed to history until the birth of her last child in 1544. When the time arrived for Helen's labor and delivery, Catholic tradition called for earnest prayers to the Virgin Mary. Having a good sense of Scripture, Helen repudiated these petitions. It was a tradition she would not follow. Her baffled midwives pressed her to make such a prayer, but she refused the ritual. The physical risk was real, but the prayers were nothing more than superstitious insurance. "If I had lived in the days of the Virgin," Helen said with poise, "God might have looked likewise to my humility and base estate as he did to the virgins, and might have made me the mother of Christ." Her childbed sermonette must have triggered gasps, but Helen was settled and comforted by her theology, knowing her prayers were going directly to God through her Savior Jesus Christ. News of Helen's refusal to pray to Mary, and her bold claim that she was on equal standing before God, very soon found its way to the ears of the local Catholic clergy, and quickly up the chain to the presiding cardinal. His response was swift to snuff out this spark of Protestant theology. Before long, Helen was arrested and imprisoned, along with her husband and 4 other outspoken Protestants in the city. The small group was soon found guilty of heresy and sentenced to death. The following day, soldiers brought Helen, her husband, and the condemned Protestants to the gallows. Helen asked to die side by side with her husband, James Finlayson, but her request was denied. Men were to be hanged, women drowned, and James would go first. Holding her young child in her arms, Helen approached her husband, kissed him, and gave him these parting words: "Husband, be glad, for we have lived together many joyful days, and this day, in which we must die, we ought to esteem the most joyful of all, because we shall have joy forever. Therefore I will not bid you good night, for we shall shortly meet in the kingdom of heaven." James was hanged before her eyes. His life on earth done, eyes fell to Helen, who was forced to hand her newborn to a nurse entrusted with the child's care from this point. The authorities led Helen to a nearby pond, bound her hands and feet, put her into a large gunny sack along with stones or weights, and threw her into the water like a bag of garbage, all for the crime of blaspheming the Virgin Mary. Heaven has all the details, but this is all we know of Helen's life. She was a bold woman, made strong by Scripture. Her birthbed claim that she was equally qualified to mother Jesus was a radical ceremonial insubordination. But at the heart, it was an act of faith, rendering the strata of all human superiority irrelevant in the presence of Christ's supremacy. Look deeper into the Reformation, and you will see that it's more than printing presses and theses nailed to doors and theological debates. It's the story of ordinary believers, husbands and wives and fathers and mothers, poised in the words of Scripture, reclaiming the primacy of Jesus Christ for their lives, their marriages, their families, and their eternal hopes, who stand as a cloud of witnesses calling us to do likewise. They call us to hold our biblical convictions without wavering, to enjoy God's earthly blessings, and to endure all momentary afflictions now for the great eternal joy set before us. You've been listening to Here We Stand, a series of 31 short biographies on heroes of the Protestant Reformation. This podcast has been produced by Desiring God
in partnership with Bethlehem College and Seminary. For more, visit desiringgod.org/stand.
He holds judgment. Now, who are they? These are so-called gods and are angelic beings which the New Testament calls principalities and powers in the heavenly places. And God is about to pronounce judgment on them because they are using their authority behind the authorities of the world in order to support injustice rather than justice. So verse 2 of the psalm says, "How long will you judge unjustly?" This is God talking to that assembly of gods. "How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute." And then, after the indictment, which he just gave, comes the condemnation from God in verse 6, which is one Jesus quotes. And he says, "I said, you are gods, sons of the Most High, all of you, nevertheless, like men." Now pause there. That means he's not talking to men. He's talking to angelic beings. "Nevertheless, like men, you shall die and fall like any prince." In other words, even though you have a very exalted status as gods, principalities, powers, angels, you're going to come crashing down just like human rulers come crashing down who abuse their authority. So, when Jesus says that God called them gods, he's not talking about us. This is the answer to Beatrice's question. In fact, he's not talking to any ordinary human beings. He's talking about and to angelic beings who are sometimes called gods in the Old Testament, just like when Satan, you remember, comes before God in the first chapter of Job. It says the sons of God came to present themselves to God, among whom was Satan. That's the sense in which gods is being used here, and sons of God. So the answer to Beatrice's question is that in this text, both in Psalm 82 and in John 10, we are not called gods. Angelic beings are called gods, and Jesus isn't going into any elaborate argument here about the meaning of this psalm. He is simply using this text as a shrewd escape maneuver from being about to be stoned. They have just accused him of blasphemy because of calling himself the Son of God, and he deflects the accusation of blasphemy by calling attention to the fact that in the Psalms, the very term sons of God is used for beings less than God, and nobody accuses the psalmist or God himself of blasphemy, so back off. If you think this means, and we might be tempted to think this means, that Jesus is arguing that he is only a godlike angelic being like those gods, that would be a big mistake. He doesn't equate himself with those gods in Psalm 82. In fact, he uses very exalted language and says, "Do you say of him whom the Father consecrated and sent into the world, you are blaspheming? Because I said I am the Son of God." So he doesn't diffuse the situation by reducing his claim to deity. He diffuses the situation by complicating the term Son of God for his accusers so that they have to get rocked back on their hermeneutical heels in order to think for a minute about how to handle what he had just said from Psalm 82. And when that happens, he's gone. Verse 39 says he makes his escape. So there are interesting and important things to be learned here in Jesus' use of Psalm 82. But that we are gods is not one of them.
Wow. With a single verse from Psalm 82, Jesus disarms a murderous mob, silences their accusation of blasphemy, and escapes death without backing down from his divine claim. That is an amazing move. Thank you, Pastor John, for walking us through all of this today to appreciate what Jesus did. And thanks for joining us today. If you have a question to ask Pastor John, find a link to email us and find our complete episode archive at the same place, askpastorjohn.com. Well, we may not form mobs, but we all find other ways to be jerks to one another. We're trying to become less of a jerk to one another, and God can confront us for being jerks to others by showing incredible kindness to us. You acted in a way that's deplorable, and then God overwhelms your life with some enormous kindness, and it breaks you in half. Has that ever happened to you? It's happened to Pastor John. The God who breaks us with kindness. That's next time. I'm Tony Rinke. We'll see you on Monday.
I think the freedom from anxiety that comes here is a radical loosening from the be-all and end-all of this world. A radical loosening that I might lose my children, or might lose my job, or might lose my health, or might lose my life. When in fact, Jesus says, well, you haven't lost much then, because you'll have eternity with me, body and soul.
It's easy for us to nod in agreement when Jesus tells us not to worry. But it's a lot harder when your job or your health or even your kids feel like they're hanging in the balance. I'm Dan Kruver. In this episode of Light and Truth, John Piper offers reasons, real weighty reasons, not to be ruled by fear. This series is part of a larger course that John Piper taught on money at Bethlehem Baptist Church on Wednesday nights in 1991.
Let's get before us the reasons. What are the reasons why we shouldn't be anxious for our food and our clothing? In other words, the very basics of life. Don't fret over these. Okay, this is the first clue right here. Therefore, which sends us back that way, doesn't it? Therefore, I tell you, do not be anxious about your life. What came just before this? Anybody got your Bible open? What was the story just before this? The parable of the rich fool. And that man pursued his security in money and built bigger barns, and his soul was taken away from him. That's this word right here. And so Jesus says, therefore, I tell you, don't be like that man. Don't be anxious about your life. This man was consumed about how to find security for his life through building bigger barns, and it backfired on him, and he lost his soul. That very night it was required of him, therefore, don't you be anxious about your life the way he was. So the first reason given is sort of a warning. If you're anxious about your life, you put yourself in the category of that man up there. But let's stay with the text now and find the rest of them. 4. Here comes the first one. 4. Life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Okay. Now we got to figure out how that works. This is the hardest one of all, I think. What is this argument? Can anybody explain that to me? How does that work? Don't be anxious about your life in regard to what you eat, and your body in regard to what you put on, because life is more than food. Can anybody paraphrase that so that it works as an argument? here he's saying that the body is more than clothing. And life is more than food. Now, see, I'm just trying to figure out how that's supposed to take away my anxiety. I mean, it seems like it might heighten my anxiety. You know, that points to something that is one possible way I thought it might work. Namely that life is so much more than what we use to protect it, and the body is so much more than what we use to clothe it, that if God made life and body, and they're so much more amazing, then surely he can handle the lesser, which is food and clothing. So maybe that's the way the argument works. If the greater, life and body, are God's creation, we're having to supply that, we're sort of adding that to it. If the greater is God's work, which it clearly is, then the lesser would be no problem for him either. So don't be anxious about the lesser if he's given you the greater. Okay. All right, now that's the second way to go at it, which may have even more to say for it, namely that the life is designed for something greater than just getting itself clothed and all the activity that goes into that. And the body was made and designed for something more than just getting itself clothed. I should have used food with life. Getting itself fed and getting itself clothed. These have kingdom purposes, spiritual purposes for which they've been given us. So don't, I'm trying to close the logic here. Don't, why not be anxious then? Don't be anxious, because then you're spending a lot of emotional energy on that for which the body and the life were not really intended. Although, you see, that I'm really playing the devil's advocate here, because I feel real devilish at this point, because I cannot quite make this work for me. Now, the chief stumbling block that's in the way for what has been said in this second interpretation is that if Jesus heightens for me my sense of how important life and body are, beyond food and clothing, and how I'm supposed to get on with what life is really about, then if I lose my life and my body, I lose everything. And therefore clothing and food become awesomely important. To the degree that he heightens the importance of life and body for what they're really about, to that degree does their maintenance become high. Now let me try out another possible solution that I worked on this afternoon. Could it be that what he's saying when he says they are more, that the life is more than food, he means your life is designed to go on beyond what food can do for it into eternity. Life and its food maintenance, life is not a direct corollary with how it can be sustained by food. If food disappears, life stays. Death or no death. And the body is more than clothing, and if your body is frozen to death because you don't have clothing, you don't lose your body. It goes to heaven or goes to hell. If that's true, that is, if life goes on into eternity, soul goes on into eternity, and body goes on into eternity, you better be concerned not with maintaining your life here, but getting ready for there. Now, the reason that came to my mind is because that's basically what Jesus said earlier in the chapter. Look at Luke 12:4 and 5. Luke 12:4. I tell you, my friends, do not fear those who kill the body. Kill the body. Not just don't clothe it, but kill it. And after that, have no more that they can do to the body. No more they can do. Your body's just sailing right on into eternity, even after it's killed. But I'll warn you whom to fear. Fear him who, after he has killed, has power to cast into hell. That's something to really be anxious about. If you want to be anxious about something, be anxious about whether your body's going to be, I would say, that works for me as long as I project that into the eternity.
if you were to just leave me on this side of eternity, I would say, if my body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, and that's the reason I'm here, and food lets me die so that I can no longer be a temple for the Holy Spirit, then I need food real bad and better. I think you're pointing in the same direction, and I agree entirely. Let me try to sum up. I mean, I'm just suggesting this here. I'm not. It may be that Jennifer's is the simplest and the easiest one, but I'm suggesting that one that works best for me at this point is to say that the reason we shouldn't be anxious about our life with respect to getting all we need to eat and worrying about food, and shouldn't be anxious about our bodies with respect to getting all the clothes we need, is because life is designed for an eternal purpose which will be there whether it gets any food or not, and the body is designed for an eternal purpose which is going to be there whether we get any clothing or not. And really what counts is, have you taken care of and are you now living so as to secure that eternal purpose for life and body? That's basically mine. In other words, I think the freedom from anxiety that comes here is a radical loosening from the be-all and end-all of this world. A radical loosening that I might lose my children, or might lose my job, or might lose my health, or might lose my life. When in fact, Jesus says, well, you haven't lost much then. Because you'll have eternity with me, body and soul. Good question. Do the other arguments now, are they different? Are they the same? Do they confirm? Let's move on and see whether or not anything that comes is going to throw a question mark back over what we've seen. Otherwise, we're not going to get through 8 of our arguments in the next 6 minutes here. Consider the ravens. Argument number 2. Or 3, if you count this one. 1, 2, 3. Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouse nor barn, and yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than the birds? Stop. That's the end of argument number 3. Can somebody put that in 2 premises and a conclusion for me for why not to be anxious? Premise number 1, this. Premise number 2, this. Conclusion, God will feed you. What's premise number 1? God feeds the ravens. Exactly. Premise number 2, you're more value than the ravens. Conclusion, God will feed you. That's the logic that's here. Does it need any explanation? Anybody see any problems with that? Anybody got a brain like mine that just creates problems right and left? What's the point of saying they don't have any storehouse or barn, or that they don't sow or reap? Are we to conclude from that? Oh, don't sow and don't reap. Don't build barns and don't build storehouses. What's the point of that? Now, wait a minute. This is very, very, very crucial. Did you say that, Randy? What did you say? They're acting like birds. Precisely. That's a wonderful insight. They're not trying to be people. They're not trying to be super birds. Super birds. They're just ordinary birds. And when they do what God designed them to do, which was pull a worm out of the ground every day and not to lay up worms, they just get, it's like manna. They rot. They get stinky. You go a worm a day. You get your worm one day at a time. The implication now, if I'm following your train of thought, is that he's not teaching us not to sow. I mean, they had no other way to raise crops in those days than to sow and reap. And yet it looks like he's down on farmers here. He's saying, what's all this anxious sowing and reaping? And they must look at him and say, you mean you just want us to kind of sit in our house all day and wait for food to drop out of heaven? Which I'm sure he doesn't mean. So why would he criticize sowing and reaping and storehouses and one barn, just one barn? And the answer, maybe, is we ought to be like humans. And not superhumans, or not anything but God-dependent humans. We ought to be like humans, and there ought to be a straightforward sowing and a straightforward reaping, and no anxiety. And one barn to put it in as you sow it, and keep it there through the winter until the next harvest. The logic, however, remains the same. God is at work. Well, let me ask you this: Do ravens work to get food and to have nests? Yes, they do. In fact, they go all over the place. A little yarn here. I don't know anything about ravens, but I watch some birds, and they all seem to work all the time. They're either getting food or they're getting stuff to build their nest with. But they're not anxious. And so I think the point is, when you are living out your normal life in a freedom from anxiety, God's at work. God cares. God's going to make sure there's what you need. Because He does that for the ravens, and ravens don't have anything like the potential you have to love God, and glorify God, and honor God. Humans are utterly different from birds in that they can not only reflect God unconsciously, but consciously in their worship. Let's just run through these real fast here. I know we could discuss each of these for 15, 20 minutes, but I want you to see all of them so that they have their cumulative effect. Which of you, by being anxious, can add a cubit to his span of life? If you are not able to do such a thing as that, why are you anxious about the rest? End of argument number 4. Can somebody restate that one for me real quickly? Yeah, anxiety doesn't help. Why do it if it doesn't help? So, it's so matter of fact, as though here's a person who's laden with anxiety, and Jesus says, can you list for me any of the benefits of this thing you're experiencing right now? And you say, no, it's misery. He said, well, just don't do it then. Stop it. Stop having those feelings that are just ruining your life, because they don't help you any. They don't make life longer. That's remarkable. I mean, very few psychologists today would talk like that. Consider the lilies, argument number 5. Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass, which is alive and field today, tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will He clothe you, O men of little faith? Stop. That's the end of argument number 5. It's almost the same as the ravens. A little different in that the difference is, what's the difference between us and the flowers here? Yeah, that's true. That is the difference between them and the ravens. The flowers really are passive. But between us and the flowers, we last forever. The point is, if God concerns Himself to display His glory and beauty on something that lasts, goodness gracious, a jonquil, flowers that come up and they're so pretty and that you can't make them last. You can't make them last more than a week or two and they're gone. Whereas we last forever. Would not God then be concerned to provide what we need in order to be the people He called us to be? Do not seek what you are to eat and what you are to drink, nor be of anxious mind, for all the nations of the world seek these things. End argument number 6. What would that be? Restate that one. It's beneath your dignity. That'd be one way to say it. It puts you in the category with the world who do not know God. Trust God. Don't have a God. You act like you don't have a God. You act like